let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaming, feedism, and everything in their orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. Today, we're pleased to have a good friend of ours back on the show. We got AJ.
Nice to see you all again.
Wonderful to see you too. How are you, my love?
Great here. I was telling Tim before we started recording, I'm out in Palm Springs for the weekend, soaking it up in the sun. Not too hot out here right now, so a little weekend getaway away from Los Angeles.
Fantastic. You know, as a non-American, my only knowledge of Palm Springs truly is Trixie Motel. I knew that it was a place that existed. I know that it's a gay mecca for the West Coast, but that's kind of all I really know. Like, what do I need to know about Palm Springs?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think you covered it in a nutshell. Trixie Motel is just such a sliver in the gay history of Palm Springs, but I think it's a pretty good representation. And hey, anything to kind of spread awareness and get more people excited, involved, or interested in coming out. I'm lucky because it's kind of in my backyard in Southern California, but pools, sun, pride, like you said, gay mecca. They've got a strip of gay and queer bars that you can hop from. That's a lot of fun. If you like the heat, it's awesome.
Young homos go there to party, old homos go there to retire.
Or to die.
Or to die. Yeah, it's another one of God's waiting rooms.
Yeah, we
Like
call it
Boca
gay night.
Raton and
So Palm Springs is gay Florida.
Yes.
yeah.
Duly noted. I mean, and as we discovered when we went to Florida, Tim, Florida is just American Australia. So, sounds like I'm gonna really enjoy, well, I don't know if enjoy. I might just sort of arrive in Palm Springs and go, yep, no, this is highly familiar, and then just sort of carry about my day and just blend into the scenery.
You'll for sure enjoy it.
So on the topic, right? You're in Palm Springs at the moment. You're chilling. You're having a little bit of R&R, which I found out through Courtney Act. If in your American accent, if you say the letters R and R, it sounds like you're doing the oh no trend. So there you go. But you're there for a little R&R, and tell us a little bit more about that. What taxing and challenging things and projects could you possibly be up to at the moment that would require the need for relaxation?
Great segue. So I created a gay dating and chat app called Bears Looking, and very excited to announce that it is both live on Google Play and the Apple App Store, and ready for download, ready for use, ready to chat with bears admirers, feeders, gainers, chasers, and anything in between that has some kind of affinity towards the bear or queer community. But it's a mobile app. It's brand new. I've been working really hard the last 4 years, actually, if you can believe it, from the initial concept as my quarantine project during COVID to get this thing up and running. But been working super, super hard and really excited to hit the ground running with promotion and just spreading awareness and letting people know it exists and it's ready to use.
I'm always fascinated by people who can just think up an app or create one. Like I have no idea how you code anything. Like I'm not a programmer, so I have not the first clue in what goes into that. So I'm always like, I tip my hat to anybody who, even if it doesn't end up being one of those like mega popular ones, the fact that you were able to figure out how to put this together and put it on the market, I'm impressed by that.
Thank you. So good point. I started this project back, during lockdown, during COVID, and my business partner at the time and I are very, very avid app users. We both work in tech. He's kind of in front-end app development, branding. I'm in digital marketing, digital advertising. So we've always had kind of our foot in the kind of programming world. And just as gay men and people who are constantly on our phones, we we're familiar with some of our big competitors or the other applications that are in the market for connection or hookups or whatever you can think to use the apps for. And, as avid users, we saw a lot of things that we liked and a lot of things that we didn't with the current competition on the market, and thought, hey, well, what if we did something like this, but better? We weren't reinventing the wheel. We kind of had a format that we were going off of that we liked and what we wanted to do. And I'll be honest, I'm not a coder myself. I mean, I've done a little bit of stuff in the history of my career, just with kind of some front end development. But we hired a team. We worked with quite a few individuals where their strengths were development, coding, programming, and kind of bundled this up neatly to play to our skill sets to make this a viable product.
The thing you said that had me cackling, screaming, and also cheering is why don't we do something that already exists but better? And you know that meme of that, Tim, you've got like a sort of endless, limitless knowledge of like reality TV bullshit. The black lady on the show that's like banging a pot and a pan together, screaming, "I didn't get no sleep."
Tanisha, yeah, from
Yeah.
the Bad Girls Club.
Yeah, that's me banging my pots and pans. Like, I want better things, okay? Like, sometimes I feel like people get so consumed in this idea of like, oh, we need a brand, baby. Like, the kernel of the concept is great, but maybe we just need to take it to the next level. And this is, for me, a big klaxon call for everything bear, chub, gainer, plus size, queer, everything. Like, we are deserving of the best. And I am so passionate about people bringing better things to the table, which is this bear's looking. I want to take it back really quickly, though, because obviously you have been on the podcast before. You shared a little bit about your journey, more specifically with, like, I guess your body journey and the confidence and acceptance and things like that. But for people who aren't necessarily familiar with your story, can you give us a bit of a recap? One, about your body journey, and two, about your dalliances in the bear and gaining community, and maybe where some of that ironically feeds into the creation of this.
Sure, absolutely. I consider myself in the gay bear community in Los Angeles, California, USA. Been part of the dabbled in gaining, and I'm on certain prominent apps that feed into all of those different interests. But always been a bigger guy, always had a passion for a variety of different bodies and body types, and just wanted to create a safe space where everybody would feel welcome, and also kind of level the playing field a little bit. I feel right now with the app market, or the way that certain individuals can express themselves or connect with others, is kind of limited, or certain monopolies, if you will, to certain communities, and just wanted to bring a safe space to other people so they have other options.
I love that, especially that point on the monopolizing, because I feel like, especially as it pertains to gaining, certain names or brands, shall we say, become synonymous with the idea of gaining. And then people find it very difficult to delineate the two. In their mind, they go, well, how can I engage in gaining if it's not going to be this? Maybe I don't want to engage in this, but I still want to engage in gaining. And I think it is important to see the landscape literally and ironically expand to be inclusive of more of these ideas. And something we often talk about on the podcast is the reality that gainers don't own the fat experience, and they also don't own the fat queer experience. Bears, chub chasers are very much a huge part, literally and figuratively, of that scene. So it's brilliant that you're creating something that kind of weaves all of that together. And as someone who, as you say, you identify with a part of these scenes, I mean, do you feel like there has been a sort of pronounced division amongst those kinds of communities?
That's a great question. I wouldn't say there's been so much division as I've seen kind of like a hodgepodge of everybody trying to fit themselves or their categories into one mold or one app. One app that I'm thinking of in specifically caters more towards the fetish or the kink community, but I almost feel like it's all over the place. There's almost too much variety, or trying to fit every single interest into one box means that, there's almost too much selection to choose from, and the kind of weeding through of trying to find a like-minded individual with similar interests is almost impossible. So again, trying to kind of make it niche enough that it's more targeted, but also still inclusive has been kind of a big point of mine. And of course, it's easier when there are overlaps in our communities, but I mean, just the certain search capabilities or the way to target individuals should kind of help us connect with each other based on common ground.
100. And this brings up a point, I think, Tim, you've often talked about this, that thing of labels are both a necessity and a curse, because
Yeah.
the moment you label yourself as something, yes, that can help to take hours of dialogue and conversation and just put it down into a neat little summary. But
Hmm.
similarly, none of us are homogenous. We are all within our various labels different. So it also becomes a curse when people are sort of have a specific idea in mind and they're thinking, oh, well, a bear is meant to be this particular way, and you aren't that way. Your bear is wrong, and I don't like how you do bear, therefore this bad, and I should tell you that this is bad. And it's just an interesting, like you say, trying to create something that has enough specificity that it helps people find what they're looking for, but enough room to breathe that people can breathe and feel a bit comfortable with the options. I mean, Tim, referencing your experience in your local community, you've been a part of the letter scene for a while. Like, what is that like when you're trying to have conversations around, these types of categories and both connecting and overcoming those hurdles?
I mean, I don't remember even hearing about it until the younger generation started coming into the leather scene, because prior to that, it was like I've explained before in the leather episode, if you want to go back and listen to it, about the difference between old guard and new guard, and how new guard is kind of pushing out the old system entirely. And in some ways, I think it's good, some ways I think it's bad. But the labels thing, like I said, that didn't really start to come in until recently, when people, I don't know, suddenly realized that they could wear more than one hat in their lifetime. I don't know why that was so confusing before. But nowadays, like just at the last claw that I went to, there were people who crossed multiple communities, and like some of the people that we had in the gainer session were also people who were into furries. They were people who were into sounding, into fisting, into extreme bondage, light bondage. Like there's so many different flavors and variety. I mean, honestly, I think it's better to have more labels. I didn't like the fact that I got slapped with twink, and that stuck with me all the way until I was almost 30.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think for some of us who've been on the gaining journey, like we start as quote unquote twink, and then you become bear or cub or chub or otter or whatever else. And everyone gets to decide when you cross that threshold at different points. Uh, but you don't, like you're just on that journey, and it's a bit of a strange thing when people are so finicky, I think, about the specificity of the thing.
There is an exception with that twink moniker, though. I've never seen them ascribe that to a young, chubby person. Never ever heard them say, "Oh, he's a twink." Like if he's over a certain, if his body shape is very obviously chubby, they never say twink. They'll say like, I think they say baby chub or something like that, like something really infantilizing.
Mm. Or like cherub, maybe. I've heard
Oh
that.
no, I doubt that. Well, I haven't heard that one.
Makes sense, but I haven't heard it.
Mm. But what you're doing with Bears Looking, having had the chance to explore the app a little bit, yeah, I love that when you first described it, you didn't say it's a dating app. You said it's a messaging chat platform. And I love that because I feel like, yes, we kind of have an expectation now when an app comes out that there is a premise and an application, and sure, people may use it for that purpose, of course, connecting with people, but to specify that it isn't necessarily about that first and foremost, it's about connecting with people. I feel like that has been a bit of a klaxon call for a lot of queer people, especially in the last 10 years or so, this sort of hyperfixation on romance and sex as the primary form of contact. And especially after COVID, what a lot of people are crying out for is friendship and connection. And if it develops into more things, I think that's a beautiful thing. But I love that really in its inception, Bears Looking is trying to give that aspect a chance before people delve into the rest. And I want to ask like about the intention behind that, like how much of that was baked in from the beginning or maybe discovered in the creation process.
I think a little bit of both. Subconsciously, I probably put a little bit of a hand in that. I consider myself a demisexual. So even if I'm going into a hookup, I'm going to want some form of connection. I'm going to want to get to know the person. Not to say that a random hookup doesn't happen with me, but hardly ever is it anonymous. This is the first app that I've ever developed, so it's been definitely a learning curve with working with certain platforms, regulations, and policies. From an app store perspective, labeling your app as gay dating and chat is kind of, I mean, going back to boxes, that's kind of the regulation of what you have to put yourself in to be accepted on the platform. There's a lot of censorship. There's a lot of regulations that one has to get through to be accepted and published on the different stores. So if you see that it says, Bears Looking, gay dating, and chat, that's probably because that's the kind of category that had to be selected to be approved. On the other hand, we all know that a lot of those platforms aren't being used for dating. We know what they're being used for, but it's a workaround. But yeah, I want people to use it for whatever they're going to use it for. Sometimes it's chat, sometimes it's friendships. Maybe you moved to a new town and you're looking for the latest hot spots in terms of nightlife or restaurants or just friends. Yeah, maybe you're horny and you want to hook up. Use it for that too. But I think yes, I wanted to kind of dissolve those labels as far as what it's going to be used for, but also, certain things had to be placed just to kind of fit into the rules of getting it out there too, which was interesting.
I find that part so fascinating. I mean, this is obviously a critique that gets levied against, Grokio when they came out with their app. The idea of, well, now that there's an app, it means that on their website, certain things have to be made private to adhere by rules. And I think there's always a back and forth, right? About like, well, what is the correct answer? What appeases people, but what also meets the needs of what the thing is trying to do? And to maybe query a little bit about the regulation stuff, like because people tend to arc up and say, "Oh, I don't understand why this thing happens." Like in that process of learning about the regulations and what you needed to adhere to, what did you find maybe answered some questions that you kind of had rattling around in the background for your own interests?
It's still very much there's so many rules and kind of hurdles to jump through to get something like this out there that it is kind of limiting. It's not the wild, wild west in terms of what you can put out there. One of the hurdles that we had to jump through was like, okay, well, now the app market is kind of saturated in terms of quote gay dating and chat, end quote. What makes your app different? Why should we accept you on the store? How is your platform going to be different than what's already out there? So that was kind of a new perspective on how to think about why we're doing what we're doing and how to present it to individuals to make us a viable product. Some of the other things is just, like I said, censorship, a more conservative approach to app development, and I mean even big heavy hitters like Meta and some of the Facebook groups that I've been a part of, that certain things are allowed and certain things aren't, and whether that's an LGBTQ targeted approach or it's just about censorship versus art versus nudity. We're still dealing with a world that is highly censored and more on the conservative side. And unfortunately, those heavy hitters in terms of platforms outreach or potential advertising, they rule the market. So you kind of have to play by their rules to get your stuff out there. So it's definitely a balance, and not anything goes in terms of, what you can create and what is going to be accepted.
That's a really interesting point. I feel like something that a lot of gainers and certainly plus size users on Instagram, especially, face is posts getting flagged and accounts getting banned because they're being claimed to be showing nudity and they're not. But it's revealed that like the AI filter that Meta uses to discern nudity is based on a percentage of what they determine to be nude pixels on the screen, and if it's above a certain percentage, they go, nah, that's flagged for nudity. So of course, a nude model could show full tit, hole, cock, and veining, and not be flagged because they've taken the shot from far away and they are a smaller body, therefore they take up less space in the photo. Whereas a larger body, even if they're not showing genitalia, nipples, or anything else that might be typically flagged, it's decided, no, this is inappropriate because it's showing too much flesh. And it is interesting, this question about how do you balance being able to express yourself with all confidence and freedom to feel great in your body when we're navigating on platforms that have these inherent limitations. I mean, Tim, I think you've been flagged for things like this in the past, is that right?
Yeah, there was a guy that was an encourager that, looked like a model, was always out like wearing Speedos by the pool and stuff like that. And so like I think I sort of like mimicked one of his poses in a jock strap, and it was from the front, so it's not like my bare ass was showing. It immediately got flagged, and I was like, okay, so he can do it, but I can't.
Yeah, but Tim, that's because you have a massive donkey dick. I think you forget that you do have a third leg. You are, on your birth certificate, your gender is not male, your gender is tripod. So I think, yes, continue.
More people talk about my cock than I do anyway. So the double standard that existed with the fact that here's a thin, fit, trim person getting thousands, and I think it's also popularity because that account probably had over 100K followers, so they're not going to take out someone that's popular and like fits the mold of, oh yeah, of course, everybody would find this attractive. But let me do it, and they're like, nope, that's bad.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and who knows what the algorithm is looking for exactly, I've kind of played around with it a little bit myself. I remember I tried to post a mirror selfie. It was a double mirror selfie, and in the back mirror, in the back of the room, a little bit fuzzy, was my full naked back, and you could see my butt, but it was, like you said, from far away, kind of grainy. And that one, it didn't get taken down, but I got a little notice that said, hey, this photo is not going to be shown to as many people as other posts would, which was interesting. So then I did a little bit of an A/B test, and I posted a picture of me in a pink thong, and this thing was riding so far up my crack, I was basically naked. But saved by the little pink line, apparently. I mean, this was broad daylight. This was me in full figured beauty, just out on Instagram, and nothing. Just stayed up. No buzz whatsoever. So, who knows exactly what's going on. But, is it worth taking the risk and getting your account taken down, or do you play it safe, or do you put a little filter up? It's hard to know what's right, what's going to work and what's not.
Mm. But coming back to Bears Looking, I think that's a beautiful thing to, at least try to push with the app, that idea of connection. And obviously people are going to use it for whatever reason they're going to use it for. But it's also good that people are maybe being a bit more conscious about these things. I mean, we don't want to have to censor ourselves because we know we should not have to. But as you say, we operate within a framework that is conservative. We operate within a society that still does not want to see certain things promoted. And so we do have to maybe operate sometimes with more caution than we would like to maintain the presence rather than sort of sacrificing everything just for the sake of freedom of expression. It is a back and forth. I want to ask here, you'd mentioned that element of, there are things that you want Bears Looking to maybe improve on that maybe haven't been done so well by the existing platforms. Can I dig in a little bit here? Like, what are some of those things that when you see them make you go, we deserve better?
Yes, I think first and foremost, it just boils down to money. A lot of the platforms right now are being bought out or owned by huge conglomerates that own a lot of different apps, and that kind of push towards advertising and making ad space as a form of revenue is kind of killing just the process of being on the app, the experience and the enjoyment. I mean, every 5 seconds I see an ad on Grindr, and it's like I'm almost forced to buy a premium account just to get rid of the ads, which of course that's what they want, but just because it's getting annoying and it's getting frustrating. And, of course, I want my app and I want my business to be successful, but I want people to want to go on it. I want them to use the app as it is intended without those blockers or those points of friction that can cause frustration. My app is queer owned and operated. We're a local small business. And going back to what you said initially, we're at a point where we can still take feedback from the community and voices will be heard. So if an individual types in, a message to our support chat or to our support email, these concerns or these suggestions are going to be taken into consideration. We're at the point where the app is live and it's functioning, but we're called an MVP, which is market viable product. It's kind of like the baseline, the basics, it works, but it's just kind of, version 1. And due to the size and the amount of money available in the business bank account, certain features are in the works or are planned. But everything is variable, everything is negotiable. And like I said, I want it to be about the user experience. I want it to be about the individuals who are using the app. So having those suggestions or individuals' input about what they want to see in the app is just as important as the features that I put in initially.
I think there's a point to be made there about a critique I think we can fairly make about the queer community. And by the queer community, I do more specifically mean gay men, and typically I do mean white gay men. Homosexual or queer person creates a thing, and then gay men are like, and it almost feels intentional at times, that thing of like, oh, you created something, well, it's not as good or as perfect or even better than the existing things, so like, why should I lower myself or waste my time? That thing of someone creates a new platform, or even here in London it happens all the time. Someone's like, I want to create a new event night which will rotate at a local venue. It's going to cater to these types of people, and this is what we want to do. Someone rocks up on the first night and they're like, oh, it isn't overflowing immediately with people, it must be trash. And it's like, baby, you have to give these things time. You have to breathe and work through and give your support so that it becomes the thing that it could promise to be.
Remember a couple of seasons ago when I said fags hate to see fags succeed?
There
I'm
is,
glad that I'm not the only person who notices that either.
I mean, look, it is a bit of a thing, but I want to put this to you, AJ, and this is obviously not to call out any local communities or any persons in particular, but I mean, is this a barrier that you find that with Bears Looking you've had to address and overcome?
Partially. So far, everybody who I've interacted with just socially online or collaborations with content creators, the overall support and positive response has been exciting. Haven't had a lot of negative feedback, luckily. Most of the negative feedback is kind of like your anecdote to the party. Like people will sign on and say, well, there's nobody on here. I'm like, yeah, well, the app just came out. You got to give it time to grow. You got to get the word out, share it with your friends. On that note, we are currently only available in North America, so Canada, US, and Mexico. It's kind of like a soft rollout. And then as we grow, as we get successful, the plan is to go international from there. So, unfortunately, and that's one big thing too. I have a lot of people reaching out from all over the world saying, why can't I download your app? I'm really excited. But overall, the process has been positive. I think as far as just the negativity and the backlash, no, there hasn't, luckily there hasn't been a lot on my end, knock on wood, not yet.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I think this is also a good moment for people to be aware. If you are an international listener, being outside of Canada, the United States, or Mexico, hold fast because the app is going to be coming. Like you mentioned, it's a monetary thing, things that are no doubt going to be in the pipeline of, yeah, we want to give more users more access as quickly as we can. So for the users who are in those regions, get downloading, get using the app, and provide this wonderful gentleman with enough revenue so that he can make it accessible to more people, and as quick as we can. But I want to reference back to something you mentioned, that a lot of these apps are being bought up by conglomerates. And I feel like this is a thing that like we don't really get to talk about because this isn't really necessarily in the niche of what we tend to talk about most times, but like it's everywhere. It's all things. Like I feel like back in the early 2000s, people were first like sharing images like of, did you know like five conglomerates own 90% of all businesses like in the world? And that's crazy. But like it is absolutely happening in our queer spaces. Bars are being bought up by conglomerates to try and turn them into chains, and apps are being bought up. Like, what is the conversation like around that at the moment?
That's great. And actually, going back to your previous question about negativity, I can kind of say that I feel like you said about parties or new beginnings, new inventions. Some individuals have that kind of negative response initially. I feel like with app culture, app users, at this point in the game, it's kind of like a necessary evil. I don't think anybody is saying, "Oh my gosh, I love Grinder" or "I love Grommr." Everything about it is perfect. I think people are ready for a change. They're ready for another avenue to express themselves or try something new. Um,
I'm sorry. I just love that you called it a necessary evil. It's like, it's like doing your
right.
taxes.
What
It's like
else?
you don't want to do it, but you know you got it because they're
Where
gonna
else are
come
we going to
after
meet
you
the
if you don't.
people? I mean, yeah, sure, we can go out to bars, but everybody is just in their little group on the apps on the in the bar. But but yeah, I think that's one barrier to entry. It's like, poof, I'm going to be competing against these Goliaths that are the corporations or the conglomerates that own the heavy hitters. And yeah, I want to kind of go against the grain and do something new. And that's kind of what it takes. Like people forget that they do have power as individuals. And if they have a good idea and they're doing something, that's viable, but also against the grain of what's the norm, it's it's people are going to want it. There's going to be an interest out there, and you can compete with these multinational, multi-million dollar corporations if you've got an idea that people are going to want. And that goes for anything, invention, business, food product. That's how new ideas get started. And sure, sometimes those conglomerates hire you as in research and development to work for them, but those ideas that spark innovation are what's sets new trends.
It's a point that could never be said enough that, every person has their testimony, right? Like this is something that's often talked about in like hyper religious spaces. Like your testimony is your own, and no one else can tell your story better than you can. And your story will win people every time because when you speak with conviction of your truth, it will speak to people. It is the same thing with what we do with this podcast. It's the same thing you're doing with Bears Looking. And when people compare two different things. They're like, well, they're selling apples and you're selling oranges. You could never compete with an apple. It's like, well, I'm not selling apples, I'm selling oranges. I'm not interested in trying to be an apple. I'm interested in being an orange and giving the bitches who want this orange thing and making that as accessible as possible. Like, there are things that, as an independent, as a smaller platform, as whatever else defines you, that you can do that others literally cannot do because only you can do it. And that creates such an exciting environment of like, y'all don't even know where this could go. Like, this could be the thing that starts something brand new, or inspires someone else to do their own thing, or piggybacks off that idea and creates a collaboration. Like, there's so much excitement with that uncertainty. And I feel like sometimes people look at that and they're like, everything's uncertain, and therefore I'm frightened and everything should die. But like, no,
Right. Or on the other end, there's apples out there, and sure, I enjoy apples, but that's all there is. So I guess I'm going to eat apples for the rest of my life. No, come up with something else. Start selling oranges.
It's very the I don't know what I don't know. So similarly, I don't know that I want this if I have never seen this. It's that thing of, oh, the first time I ever saw like a thick gay man was truly the moment that I understood that I was gay. Something that I love about this conversation is this element of like anyone can kind of create anything for shits and giggles and be like, oh yeah, I made a thing. Boo. But like there is a very discernible sense of the why with what you're doing. There is a very clear message and theme. And even from the bits I've been able to see, we've had some conversations, I've seen some stuff, like it looks really user friendly and it looks like it's really geared towards people who are looking to really connect, which is something I love. The elements sometimes with like, I don't know, girl, like I'll log onto to Grindr, to Scruff and other apps, and sometimes like the functions of certain things like move across the page, or like things that used to be the thing that it was the thing is no longer the thing. Like when I re-downloaded Grindr and now there are taps. Like what is a tap? I don't know what this is. Like why are you tapping me and not messaging? Like just themes and tropes that just don't really gel. Whereas with Bears Looking, it's all very clear cut.
Do you think the tapping is because of the under the stall like foot tapping, like I want some dick,
The
like
actual
Republican tap?
the actual name for why it's called a tap.
Oh, is that why it's
Oh,
called
I
that?
don't know. Or if it's the tapping of the
Oh,
foot, like, hey, I want to tap that.
I just assumed it was the under the stall foot tapping signal that you want some dick.
Little senator
Unless
move.
I'm dating myself too much with that.
I think Scruff did it first with their woof. And then, just kind of everybody copied that, and they're like, let's come up with a new term for it. But who knows about why the tap?
I mean, Tim, knowing you, I was actually quite surprised you didn't be like, oh, is it because of the Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe with the heart that was buried under the floorboard? Is it the tapping of the beating heart as it
That
dies?
wouldn't be a tapping, that would be a thumping.
Oh,
Ooh,
oh,
I
I
like
see.
a thump. I like that. Maybe there's thinking needs a thump.
Yeah, that
You've
was
just been thumped. I don't know if how would you take that?
I think a thump actually makes a lot more sense to how gay men tend to handle themselves in public. Like when they're trying to flirt, it's like they thump you on the back, they thump you on the shoulder, or something like that. They're a little drunk. They're trying to be like,
Heart goes thump.
If you're a gainer, you should thump on our bellies to make sure that they're ripe before you take us home.
exactly. That's how you tell if the melons are good to go. But I am curious, what you've launched already, and you launched when did you launch officially?
I'd say about 2, 3 months ago, officially things were kind of up and running. So brand new, just kind of starting out my marketing efforts, doing promotions now. This is actually my first time hopping online on live and promoting and talking about it.
Oh,
So you two
fantastic.
are the first. So thank you for that. But to answer your question, I think it kind of goes back to the fundamentals of design. When design is good, you don't think about it. Whether that's a door handle, a chair that you're sitting in, a light switch. When things function well, they just be integrated into your life. It's when design is bad and things don't work that you think, hey, this really sucks. And I think with a lot of apps, there are a lot of apps that we all have probably downloaded and immediately thought, oh, this sucks. I don't know how to navigate this. I'm getting out of here. And when you don't have to think about it, it runs smoothly. That's what I consider a successful app. And like I said, I don't have a background in user design, user experience, but I am an app user. I know what works and what functions, and that's kind of how I've been basing things off of. Getting that to fruition with working with a design team and a development team and saying, hey, this has to run smoothly, and why are these screens taking so long to load? And it's a lot of management and back end product design that I'm kind of having to force myself to learn. And I'm usually not that kind of forceful person either, but being a business owner is learning how to manage a team and get things running. So that's been kind of a learning after the fact.
I love that you mentioned door handles because, of course, my mind goes to the episode of Ab Fab where Patsy has burnt down the kitchen and they're trying to redesign, and Saf is going, "You've looked through every magazine in the bloody country. What do you want?" And then Eddie's just sort of waffling twatistry. She's like, "Well, I don't, I sort of want not modern or sort of not what modern was. I want that sort of hyper postmodern. Sort of sweetie, when you go to the dentist, they got the lights and the chisel and the clank clank, and you've got that sort of bowl that you spit. I want the bowl. You sort of some hyper modern spittoon. Yes,
sort of ultra modern spittoon.
and then they fly all the way because oh, I know what she's talking about a door handle that she really likes, and then they fly all the way to New York, and then I think it's like Government House in New York or some bullshit, and they go down like 3 corridors, and it's like the door handle of the utility closet, and they're like take a snap little photo, like, yes, that's the one.
We all have that story of a door handle that we love or we hate.
So when it came to, those design elements, what particular inspirations did you have? Or was it more a sense of, I know that I've seen things that I don't like and I'd like it to not be that?
Yeah, I think it was more that, it's like I said, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. It's a grid-based, geo-based, scrolling grid with the option to message and favorite users at the moment. We have a tab for an events program. You can filter and search. So it was kind of more based on the experience of other apps, working from the ground up, and like you said, knowing what I liked, knowing what worked and what didn't, and then just making sure the functionality of buttons were clear from there.
And I want to round out here just by asking, as much as you've mentioned, there are things that are coming down the pipeline, some of it's money-based, some of it's activity-based, all of that. What do you see as the future for Bears Looking?
That's a great question. I think just growth, being a prominent member of the app community. We plan on sponsoring a lot of events, throwing a lot of parties, but just being a place online in the digital world where people can connect and can chat with each other. And I want people to meet off of it. I want them to say like, "Hey, I recognize you from the app." There were a couple people who were a little hesitant with the name Bears Looking. One of my good friends, he's more a chaser admirer, but still part of the bear community. He loves big boys. And he was like, "Hey, is this app even going to be for me based on the name?" And I want to stress, yes, if you're a bear lover, a chaser, admirer, gainer, if you love that community, you're going to be welcome here.
I think again that's a great place to come back to the reminder that as gainers, and we've said this on the podcast before, like we are not a monolith, right? We are not trapped in an endless sea of body shame and self-loathing. We are actually very much in the knit and framework of bear, cub, otter, chub chaser, encourage a gainer. I think in many ways women can be a part of that as well. The trans non-binary. I think it's so much more expansive than we allow ourselves to think. And I do think there is an irony in the fact that bears, chubs, gainers are by definition large. And yet we think so small with this idea of who we can be and how we can interact and engage. So I love that we all kind of come under that label together as well. But AJ, I think this has been a fantastic opportunity to explore Bears Looking, and want to say thank you for your time today to explore this fabulous new platform.
Thank you too so much for having me on again. It's always a pleasure. I love how you pick my brain and make me think. And I plan on seeing you on the app very soon.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you first and foremostly, where can people find the Bears Looking app and associated social medias attached with Bears Looking?
Bears Looking is available on Google Play and the Apple App Store currently. And if you go to our link tree, Bears Looking, it hosts all of our different social links. Instagram, Bears Looking Official. We're on TikTok as Bears Looking. We've got a spicy, steamy Twitter or X account under Bears Looking. It's all pretty homogenous as far as our handles goes, but doing a quick search, you'll be able to see all of our socials. And that's
Love
where
it.
That's where we keep everybody up to date with happenings, events, new app features, where to go to download.
Fabulous. And where can our listeners find you online?
Great question. So all my handles is under Bear with AJ. That's BEAR with AJ. But you'll see me all over the Bears looking stuff as well. It's very, very interchangeable at this point. A lot of cross promotion.
And anyone who has not had the chance to gaze upon AJ, I'm going to encourage you, dear listener, please go and do so, because AJ is fucking gorgeous. And what better person to be the face of and representing such fantastic media?
I'm lucky I haven't had to spend a lot of money on marketing efforts, because I do kind of fit the mold in terms of the target demographic. So I post a lot of pictures of myself in promotion for the app.
We love a multi-talented. She is the elusive chanteuse. She is the model, the face, the owner, the co-creator, the CEO, the founder, and the mother of the house.
Oh, back to labels.
But that's it for another fantastic episode here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. And to that point, make sure that when you're on the App Store at Bears Looking, make sure you give them a 5-star rating and a fabulous review as well. Now, if you liked this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, please share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BlueSky at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at ThiccyMouse. You can also look us up on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Thicc Radio, or at our website at podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to submit a voice note or become a financial supporter of the show, you can find the links in the show notes, and you can always write to us at thiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Anchor app podcast produced by Stan and Thiccy Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by Stan.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitu.
Our theme song is provided by Spotify.